Commander Sarah Chen stared at the tactical display with growing unease. The holographic projection showed their position clearly. One human research vessel, the Times Endeavour *, completely surrounded by 17 Kitharon warships. The sleek, predatory vessels formed a perfect sphere around them, their energy signatures pulsing like angry heartbeats on the scanner. "Well, this is just fantastic," muttered Lieutenant Torres from the weapons station. His hands hovered uselessly over controls that commanded weapons barely powerful enough to scratch the paint on a Kytheron destroyer, let alone their massive dreadnoughts. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the expedition's chief scientist, looked up from her console with wide eyes. "Commander, I'm reading massive energy buildups across their fleet. They're charging weapons." Sarah's jaw tightened. The Times Endeavour was a research vessel, not a warship. They had stumbled into Kitharon space while investigating strange energy readings from an uncharted star system. Now they found themselves facing the most powerful military force in known space. The Kytherans were legends among spacefaring species, 7 feet tall, with chitinous exoskeletons and forearms ending in razor-sharp claws. They had conquered dozens of worlds in the past century. Their technology was centuries ahead of most species, their ships faster and more heavily armed than anything humanity had ever built. "Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Webb. "On screen," Sarah ordered. The main view screen shimmered, revealing the intimidating figure of a Kitharan war commander. Its mandibles clicked menacingly as it spoke, the universal translator converting its harsh chittering into cold, precise words. "Human vessel, you have trespassed in sacred Kitharan territory. This system contains the tomb world of our ancestors. Your presence here is an act of war." Sarah stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back to hide their slight trembling. "War Commander, I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Confederation research vessel Times Endeavour *. We meant no offense. We were investigating unusual energy readings and had no knowledge this system was claimed by your people." The alien's 4 eyes seemed to glow with malevolent light. "Ignorance is not an excuse. You have seen what you should not see. You cannot be allowed to return to your kind with knowledge of this place. Perhaps we could discuss terms," Sarah said diplomatically. "The Earth Confederation has always sought peaceful relations with the Kitharan Empire." A sound that might have been laughter came from the alien's throat. "Your species amuses us, humans. So small, so weak. Yet you persist in believing you matter in the grand scheme of the galaxy. Your Confederation controls perhaps a dozen systems. We rule over 3,000 worlds." Dr. Harper leaned toward Sarah and whispered urgently, "Commander, I'm detecting something unusual about the energy readings from the planet below. They're not natural. There's some kind of massive artificial structure down there." Sarah's mind raced. Whatever was on that planet, the Kitharans clearly considered it extremely important. Important enough to destroy a human ship to keep it secret. "War Commander," she said carefully, "surely there's no need for bloodshed. We're just scientists, explorers. We pose no threat to your empire." The alien's mandibles clicked again, a sound Sarah was beginning to recognize as their equivalent of contempt. "No threat? Perhaps not. But you are witnesses. And we have not survived for 10,000 years by allowing potential threats to escape." The tactical display suddenly erupted with new warnings. The Kitharan ships were moving into attack formation, their weapons now fully charged. "Shields up," Sarah barked. "All hands, battle stations." The Times Endeavour shuddered as its minimal defensive shields activated. They would hold for perhaps 30 seconds against the kind of firepower arrayed against them. Lieutenant Torres looked up from his console with grim determination. "Commander, I've got an idea. It's crazy, but it might buy us some time. I'm listening." The Kitharans are positioning themselves for a standard execution formation. Overwhelming firepower from multiple vectors to ensure complete destruction. But they're assuming we'll try to run or fight conventionally. Sarah nodded. "Go on. What if we don't? What if we do the one thing they'd never expect a outgunned ship to do?" Dr. Harper caught on first. "You want to attack them?" Torres grinned fiercely. "Not just attack them. Ram them. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the engines and the soft beeping of sensors. Sarah stared at the tactical display, her mind processing the insane proposal. The Times Endeavour Times was fast for a research vessel, its engines designed to carry it quickly between star systems. If they could build up enough velocity— "Which ship?" she asked quietly. Torres highlighted one of the Ketheran vessels on the display. "Their command dreadnought. It's the largest ship in their formation, positioned at the center. If we could take it out, it might disrupt their coordination long enough for us to reach the planet's surface." "You're talking about a suicide run," Webb said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe," Sarah replied. "But maybe not. Dr. Harper, what can you tell me about that artificial structure you detected?" The scientist's fingers flew over her console. "It's huge, Commander. Kilometers across, buried beneath the planet's surface. The energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. If I had to guess, I'd say it's some kind of ancient technology, possibly a weapon system." Sarah felt a cold smile spread across her face. "Or a defense system." The war commander's voice crackled over the comm again. "You have 30 seconds to prepare for oblivion. Humans, use them wisely. Torres, prepare for emergency burn. Full power to engines. Divert all energy from life support and non-essential systems." "Aye, Commander." "Dr. Harper, I need you to find us a way down to that planet. If we're going to die today, I want to know what the Kytherans are so desperate to hide." I-. state. The scientist nodded grimly and turned back to her scanners. "Webb, send a message drone back toward Earth space. Full data dump on everything we've discovered here." "Commander, at this distance, it would take the drone 3 months to reach the nearest Confederation outpost." Sarah's smile grew colder. "Then we better make sure we stay alive long enough to matter." The countdown timer on her command chair showed 15 seconds remaining. "All hands, brace for impact," Sarah called over the ship's intercom. "We're going hunting." The Times Endeavour's Times engines suddenly roared to life with a sound like thunder. The ship leaped forward with surprising speed, catching the Ketheran formation completely off guard. "Sir," called the Ketheran tactical officer aboard their flagship, "the human ship is accelerating directly toward us." War Commander Threk's 4 eyes widened in disbelief. "What? That's impossible. They must know it's suicide." "They're not changing course, sir. Impact in 40 seconds. For the first time in his long military career, Threk felt something he hadn't experienced since his youth. Uncertainty. Humans were supposed to be cowards, weak-willed creatures who surrendered when faced with superior force. This behavior made no sense. "Evasive maneuvers," he snarled. "All ships, open fire." But the massive dreadnought was not built for quick course corrections. It began to turn ponderously as energy beams lanced out from the surrounding vessels. Aboard the Times Endeavour *, the ship bucked and shook as enemy fire struck their failing shields. "Shields down to 12%, Torres called out. 8%, 5%. Shields failed. Energy beams now struck the ship's hull directly, tearing away armor plating and causing explosions throughout the vessel. But somehow, the Times Endeavour Times kept flying. Sarah gripped her command chair as the bridge lights flickered. On the main screen, the Ketheran dreadnought grew larger and larger, its massive bulk filling their entire view. 20 seconds to impact, Torres shouted over the sound of buckling metal. Dr. Harper looked up from her console with a strange expression. "Commander, I'm picking up something from the planet. The artificial structure is responding to our presence." "What do you mean, responding?" "The energy levels are spiking. It's like something down there is waking up." Suddenly, the space around them lit up with blinding light. Massive energy beams erupted from the planet's surface, striking the Kytharan ships with devastating force. The aliens' advanced shields flickered and failed under the onslaught as weapon systems that had slumbered for millennia roared back to life. "What is that?" Webb gasped, staring at the view screen in amazement. 3 Kytharan destroyers simply vanished, vaporized by the incredible energies being unleashed from below. The remaining ships began firing frantically at the planet. but their weapons seemed to have no effect. War Commander Threk's bridge was in chaos. Damage reports flooded in from across the fleet as the mysterious planetary defenses tore through his ships like they were made of paper. "Sir, we're detecting massive power signatures from the planet's core. The entire world appears to be some kind of weapon." Threk's mandibles clicked in rage and fear. "Impossible! The tomb world has been dead for 5,000 years. The ancients are long gone." But even as he spoke, more of his ships died under the relentless bombardment. Whatever was happening, the humans had somehow triggered it. "Get us out of here," he commanded. "Emergency, jump to hyperspace." But it was too late. The Times Endeavour *, still burning toward the flagship, struck the massive dreadnought just as Threk gave the order to retreat. The research vessel, small and fragile though it was, hit the alien ship's command section at nearly a quarter the speed of light. The explosion lit up space for hundreds of kilometers. When the light faded, both ships were gone, destroyed in a mutual annihilation that sent shockwaves through the surviving Keitharan fleet. "Doctor," Harper found herself lying on the deck of what had once been the Times Endeavour's Times Bridge. Somehow, impossibly, she was still alive. Emergency lights flickered weakly, and she could hear the hiss of escaping atmosphere from somewhere nearby. She pulled herself to her feet, her head spinning from the impact. Around her, she could see the crumpled forms of her fellow crew members. Torres was unconscious but breathing. Webb was trapped under a fallen beam but alive. Of Commander Chen, there was no sign. Emergency power flickered on, and the main view screen managed to display a crackling image of space outside. The Keitharan fleet was in full retreat, their remaining ships jumping to hyperspace as fast as their damaged engines could manage. The planetary defenses continued to fire at them until the last enemy vessel disappeared. Harper staggered to her communications console and managed to activate the emergency beacon. If any other human ships came looking for them, they would at least know where to search. As she worked, she became aware of a strange sound echoing through the ship's twisted corridors. It took her a moment to realize what it was. Laughter. Sarah Chen's voice, weak but defiant, came over the ship's intercom system. "Well, would you look at that?" the commander said from wherever she was trapped in the wreckage. "Turns out, humanity just made some very powerful friends." Dr. Harper smiled despite their desperate situation. Outside, the ancient defense systems continued their vigilant watch. And somewhere in the depths of space, the surviving Keitharans were learning a lesson they wouldn't soon forget. Sometimes, the smallest creatures bit back. And sometimes, they had friends the size of planets. 3 days after the battle, Dr. Elizabeth Harper stood at the edge of a massive crater on the planet's surface. Her breathing apparatus working overtime in the thin atmosphere. The wreckage of the Times Endeavour Times lay scattered behind her, its twisted metal already being reclaimed by repair drones that had emerged from hidden underground facilities. The drones were not human-made. Commander Sarah Chen limped up beside her, one arm in a makeshift sling, and a fresh scar running across her forehead. Of the Times Endeavour's Times crew of 47, 31 had survived the crash. The rest had died heroes, and their sacrifice had revealed something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. "Any word from the deep scan teams?" Sarah asked, watching as another repair drone carefully extracted Lieutenant Torres from beneath a collapsed bulkhead. "Torres is going to be fine," Harper replied. "Broken ribs, concussion, but he'll live. As for the planet," she gestured toward the massive excavation taking place before them. "Sarah, we've stumbled onto something incredible." The crater stretched for kilometers in every direction, and at its center, a structure was slowly rising from beneath the surface. It looked like a vast metallic flower, its petals unfolding to reveal layer upon layer of ancient technology. Energy patterns raced across its surface in mesmerizing displays of light. "The hegemony," Harper continued, using the name they had discovered carved in the strange script that covered every surface. "That's what they called themselves. The civilization that built this place." Sarah squinted at the enormous structure. "How long ago? Best estimate? 50,000 years, maybe more. Long before humans developed agriculture, long before the Ketherans crawled out of their homeworld's oceans. This entire planet is one massive intelligence network. A new voice joined them. Webb, the communications officer, approached with a tablet in his hands and an expression of barely contained excitement. "Commander, you need to see this. We've established communication with the planetary AI." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "The planet is talking to us?" "Not talking exactly. More like teaching. It's been downloading information directly into our computers. Language patterns, historical records, technical specifications. The amount of data is staggering." Harper took the tablet and scrolled through pages of alien text that somehow made perfect sense to her. "It's learning our language as it teaches us theirs. Look at this." She pointed to a section that had been translated. This facility was built as a guardian post, one of thousands scattered across the galaxy. The hegemony created them as a defense against something they called the Devourers. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Devourers? A species that consumed entire civilizations, stripping worlds of all biological matter and moving on to the next system. The hegemony fought them for 10,000 years before finally developing these guardian stations. Webb pointed to another section of the display. According to this, the war ended when the Devourers were driven beyond the galactic rim, but the hegemony was so exhausted by the conflict that their civilization collapsed shortly afterward. The guardian stations were left automated, waiting for the day the threat might return, or for someone else to trigger their protocols, Sarah mused. The Ketherans have been treating this place as a sacred burial ground for generations. They probably never got close enough to activate the systems, Harper nodded grimly. But we did. When we arrived, the station's sensors detected our distress and identified the Ketherans as a potential threat. The defensive systems activated automatically. A rumbling sound echoed across the crater as more structures began emerging from underground. Massive weapon emplacements rose like metallic trees, their surfaces gleaming with barely contained energy. Manufacturing facilities the size of city blocks broke through the surface, already beginning to hum with activity. "Commander," Webb said quietly, "there's something else. The planetary AI has been monitoring communications across local space. The Ketherans aren't done with us." Sarah's expression hardened. "Explain." "They've sent word back to their main fleet. Full battle group, over 200 ships. They're calling it a holy war now, claiming we've desecrated their sacred sites. They'll be here in 6 days." The three humans stood in silence, watching as the ancient machinery continued to awaken around them. Finally, Sarah spoke. 200 ships. Even with these defenses, those are bad odds." Harper smiled suddenly, an expression that would have looked perfectly at home on a predator. "Actually, Sarah, I don't think they are." "Show her the projections." Webb, the communications officer, tapped his tablet, bringing up a three-dimensional tactical display. "The Guardian Station's manufacturing capabilities are beyond anything we've ever seen. In the 3 days since activation, it's already produced 12,000 automated defense drones. By the time the Ketherans arrive, that number will be close to 50,000. Sarah whistled low. 50,000 drones against 200 ships? Each drone is roughly equivalent to a Ketheran fighter, Harper explained. But that's not the best part. The station has been analyzing our ship's computer systems, learning about human technology and tactics. It wants to upgrade our surviving equipment. Upgrade how? In response to her question, a section of the crater wall slid aside, revealing a vast chamber filled with gleaming machinery. At its center sat something that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. It looked like the Times Endeavour asterisk, but transformed. The research vessel's basic hull had been reinforced with the same strange metal that comprised the Guardian station. Its engines had been replaced with sleek new drives that pulsed with contained energy. Where once it had carried minimal weapons, now it bristled with defensive systems that seemed to bend light around them. The AI calls it adaptive reconstruction, Harper said. It takes our technology and improves it, using hegemony principles. The new Times, Endeavour Times, is faster, stronger, and more heavily armed than any ship in human space. Webb consulted his tablet again. But there's more. Commander, the AI has been studying our crew records, our personal files, even our psychological profiles. It's impressed by something it calls human adaptability factors. Which means what exactly? Harper's smile grew wider. It means that in 50,000 years of monitoring the galaxy, the hegemony AI has never encountered a species quite like us. We're not the strongest, we're not the fastest, and we're certainly not the most advanced. But we have something that even the original hegemony lacked. And what's that? We refuse to give up. A new sound echoed across the crater, musical and somehow familiar. Sarah realized after a moment that it was coming from the Guardian station itself. A complex harmony generated by thousands of different systems working in concert. It's singing, Webb said in wonder. Harper nodded. The AI is celebrating. According to the records, this is the first time in 50,000 years that a Guardian station has found a species worthy of alliance. It's offering to share hegemony technology with humanity. Sarah felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. What would that mean? It means, Harper replied, that when the Kitharans arrive expecting to face a broken research ship and a handful of survivors, they're going to find something very different. The rebuilt times, Endeavor times, rose slowly from the underground facility, supported by anti-gravity systems that made no sound. As it cleared the crater's edge, weapon systems that had been theoretical concepts just days before powered up with lethal efficiency. The ship's new hull shimmered with adaptive armor that could deflect energy weapons and absorb kinetic impacts. But the Times Endeavor times was just the beginning. More ships were rising from hidden construction bays scattered across the planet's surface. Not human designs, but vessels that combined the best of both civilizations. They moved with the fluid grace of hegemony technology guided by human tactical thinking. Sarah turned to address her surviving crew members, who had gathered to watch the impossible sight before them. People. 3 days ago we were scientists and explorers. Today, we're the first human hegemony alliance fleet in galactic history. Lieutenant Torres, his ribs bound but his spirit unbroken, stepped forward. What are our orders, Commander? Sarah looked up at the fleet assembling overhead, then back at her crew. These were researchers, technicians, and communications specialists. None of them were soldiers, but they were human. Our orders, she said firmly, are to show the galaxy that there's a new power rising. The Kitharans wanted to start a holy war? Let's give them one they'll remember. The Guardian station's song grew louder, joined now by the harmonic frequencies of the new fleet. Across the galaxy, automated monitoring posts that had been silent for millennia suddenly activated, detecting the awakening of their sister station. Ancient protocols engaged, and messages began traveling through subspace networks that predated known civilization. The hegemony was not truly dead. It had been waiting, and now it had found inheritors worthy of its legacy. In space high above the planet, the new Times, Endeavor Times, took its position at the head of the fleet. Its communications array, enhanced with hegemony technology, reached out across the stars toward Earth. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Confederation vessel Times Endeavor *. She broadcast on all frequencies. We are transmitting the complete technological database of the hegemony civilization to all human colonies. Share it freely. Build quickly. The galaxy is about to change, and humanity is going to be at the center of that change. The message raced across space at speeds that shouldn't have been possible, carried by communication networks that had been waiting 50,000 years to carry such news. On Earth, in the halls of the Confederation Council, emergency sessions were called as impossible data flooded their computers. Ship designs that made their best vessels look like crude toys. Weapon systems that redefined the concept of warfare. Manufacturing techniques that could transform entire worlds. And in the depths of space, moving toward the Guardian station with religious fury, War Commander Threk led the largest Kitharan battle fleet ever assembled. 237 ships, enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. He was coming to reclaim what he saw as sacred ground and to punish the humans who had dared to defile it. He had no idea what was waiting for him. The Guardian Station's song reached a crescendo as the last of the new ships emerged from their construction bays. The fleet hung in space like a constellation of deadly stars, each vessel a perfect fusion of ancient wisdom and human ingenuity. Commander Chen sat in the captain's chair of her rebuilt ship, watching the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. In 6 days, the Catharans would arrive expecting an easy victory. Instead, they were going to learn why humans had survived and thrived on a hostile world, despite being physically weaker than most species in the galaxy. Sometimes, it wasn't about being the strongest. Sometimes, it was about being too stubborn to lose. War Commander Threk stared at the tactical display with growing unease. His massive fleet hung at the edge of the sacred system, 237 ships arranged in perfect battle formation. Each vessel represented the pinnacle of Ketheron military might. Armed with weapons that could crack planets, and shielded by technology that had made his people the dominant force in the galaxy for over 1,000 years. So why did he feel afraid? "Report," he commanded, his 4 arms gripping the command throne with barely controlled tension. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the tomb world," his tactical officer replied, mandibles clicking nervously. "The readings are unprecedented. Whatever the humans awakened down there, it's changed the entire planet." Threk's primary eyes focused on the display while his secondary pair monitored his bridge crew. The fear was spreading. His warriors, veterans of a dozen conquered worlds, were showing signs of uncertainty he had never seen before. "Elaborate." "The planet's surface is now covered with structures that weren't there 6 days ago. Massive construction facilities, weapon emplacements, and what appears to be an orbital shipyard. Sir, our deep-range scanners are detecting over 50,000 artificial objects in various orbits around the world." Threk felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. 50,000? That's impossible. The humans had 1 ship, 1 small research vessel. Threk felt a con. His communications officer looked up from her station with an expression of disbelief. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. The same ship we destroyed 6 days ago." The war commander's mandibles clicked in confusion. "That's impossible. I watched that ship die." "Nevertheless, sir, they're hailing us." On screen, the main view screen flickered to life, revealing a human female in a military uniform that Threk didn't recognize. She stood on what appeared to be a ship's bridge, but the technology visible behind her was unlike anything in the Ketheran database. "War Commander Threk," Commander Sarah Chen said calmly. "I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Hegemony Alliance vessel Times Endeavor **. I believe you have some unfinished business with us." Threk's 4 eyes widened in shock. You died. I watched your ship burn." Sarah's smile was cold and predatory. "Reports of our death have been greatly exaggerated. However, reports of your impending defeat have not been." The war commander's confusion quickly transformed into rage. "Defeat? You command a single vessel against the might of the Ketheran battle fleet. This system is sacred to my people. You have desecrated the tomb world of our ancestors, and for that crime, every human in this system will die." "Actually," Sarah replied conversationally, "we've learned some interesting things about this system in the past week. Would you like to know what we discovered?" "I care nothing for human lies. The beings buried here aren't your ancestors, War Commander. Your people found this dead world 5,000 years ago and built your mythology around it because the ruins impressed you. But the real builders of this place left something behind. Something that's been waiting for the right people to find it." Behind Sarah, the viewscreen display showed a wider view of space around the planet. Threk's breath caught in his throat as he saw the true scope of what the humans had awakened. The space around the world was filled with ships, not just the primitive human vessel, but sleek warships that seemed to bend light around their hulls. They moved with impossible grace, their formation patterns unlike anything in Ketheran tactical doctrine. 53,000 ships, Sarah continued, each one equipped with technology that makes your best dreadnoughts look like toys. The hegemony spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. War Commander. They're excellent teachers. Threk's tactical officer leaned toward him urgently. "Sir, our scanners are detecting massive energy buildups throughout the enemy fleet. They're charging weapons we don't recognize. The war commander's mind raced. 50,000 ships was an impossible number. Even the full might of the Kithran Empire couldn't field that many vessels. But the evidence was there on his scanners. Each contact confirmed by multiple sensor arrays. "You're bluffing," he said finally. "Some kind of sensor deception. Humans lack the industrial capacity to build such a fleet." Sarah's expression didn't change. "You're absolutely right. Humans couldn't build this fleet. But our new allies could. In 6 days, they've constructed more ships than humanity has built in its entire spacefaring history. And each one is crewed by beings who learned warfare by surviving the greatest galactic conflict in history. Impossible. Our intelligence reports indicate that humans have no allies capable of such construction." "Your intelligence reports are out of date, War Commander. As of 6 days ago, humanity formed an alliance with the inheritors of the hegemony civilization. Perhaps you've heard of them? They're the ones who built all those ruins you've been worshipping." Threk felt something he had never experienced in his long military career: genuine terror. The hegemony was legend among the older spacefaring races, ancient beyond measure. Their technology was spoken of in whispers by species that remembered the old wars. That's impossible. The hegemony is extinct. They died out 50,000 years ago. Their bodies died, Sarah acknowledged, but their knowledge didn't. And they were very specific about one thing. They really, really don't like bullies. The tactical display on Threk's flagship suddenly erupted with new contacts. The human fleet was moving, not in the chaotic swarm he expected from inferior tacticians, but in formations that spoke of mathematical precision and strategic depth. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the enemy fleet is advancing. They're moving in patterns I've never seen before." Threk studied the display with growing dread. The human ships weren't just advancing. They were flowing around his formation like water, positioning themselves with an efficiency that suggested they knew exactly what his forces were going to do before he did. "All ships, prepare for battle," he commanded. "Show these humans what Kithran might means." The space around them exploded into violence as 237 Kithran warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams that could vaporize asteroids lanced out toward the advancing human fleet, and accomplished absolutely nothing. The human ships moved like schools of fish, each vessel perfectly coordinated with the others. They flowed around the Kithran attack patterns, as if the massive energy beams were simply obstacles to navigate around, rather than weapons capable of destroying them. "Sir, direct hit on multiple enemy vessels," the tactical officer reported excitedly. "Effect? No effect, sir. Their armor appears to be absorbing our energy weapons completely." Threk watched in horror as the first wave of human ships closed with his fleet. The weapons they employed were unlike anything in his experience. Instead of the crude energy beams and kinetic projectiles he expected, they fired what appeared to be controlled spatial distortions that simply erased sections of Kithran ships from existence. The dreadnought times Vengeance of the Void Asterisk, pride of the Kithran fleet, took a direct hit and simply ceased to exist from the bridge back to the engine compartment. The remaining sections of the ship drifted apart like broken toys. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Threk commanded desperately, but his ships, designed for overwhelming firepower rather than agility, couldn't match the fluid grace of the human vessels. The enemy fleet moved through his formation like a blade through silk, each pass leaving burning Kithran wrecks in their wake. Aboard the Times Endeavour Asterisk, Commander Chen watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The hegemony tactical systems were providing real-time analysis of enemy movements, predicting Kithran responses with uncanny accuracy. "Torres, report," she called to her weapons officer. "Direct hits on 17 enemy vessels, Commander. Their armor can't handle hegemony particle displacement weapons. It's like they're made of paper." Dr. Harper looked up from her science station with an expression of amazement. "Sarah, the planetary AI is coordinating the entire battle in real time. It's analyzing every shot, every maneuver, every communication from the Kithran fleet and adjusting our tactics accordingly." "How many ships have we lost?" "None," Torres replied with disbelief. "The hegemony defensive systems are adapting to their weapons faster than they can retarget. We're essentially untouchable. On the main view screen, the battle continued to rage. But it was becoming clear that this wasn't a battle at all. It was a demonstration. The human fleet moved with supernatural precision, each ship exactly where it needed to be at exactly the right moment. They didn't just defeat the Kitharan attacks. They anticipated them. Energy beams that should have found their targets struck empty space as human ships flowed away like smoke. Kinetic projectiles passed harmlessly through formations that had already shifted to new positions, and slowly, methodically, the Kitharan fleet died. "Commander," Webb called from the communications station. "We're receiving surrender offers from multiple Kitharan vessels." Sarah considered for a moment. "Put me through to their flagship." War Commander Threk's bridge was a scene of chaos and despair. More than half his fleet was gone, destroyed or disabled by weapons that seemed to come from nightmares. His remaining ships were trapped in a sphere of human vessels that moved with such coordination that they seemed to share a single mind. "War Commander," his communications officer said quietly. "The humans are hailing us again." On screen, Commander Chen appeared once more, her expression unchanged from their first conversation. Behind her, the bridge of her ship hummed with quiet efficiency. "War Commander, your situation is hopeless. I'm offering you a choice. Surrender now, and I'll allow your surviving ships to withdraw. Continue fighting, and we'll demonstrate what the hegemony weapons can really do when we stop holding back." Threk's mandibles clicked in fury. "You expect me to surrender to humans? To inferior beings who didn't even have faster-than-light travel when my people ruled the stars? I expect you to make an intelligent decision based on the tactical situation. You've lost 60% of your fleet in the past hour. Your weapons can't penetrate our defenses. Your ships can't match our maneuverability. This isn't a battle, War Commander. It's a lesson." "What lesson?" Sarah's expression finally changed, her cold smile returning. "The lesson that being physically stronger doesn't mean you're better. The lesson that having more ships doesn't guarantee victory. The lesson that intelligence, adaptability, and the refusal to accept defeat are more valuable than raw power." On the tactical display, the human ships began to glow with increasing energy as their weapons charged to full power. The readings were off the scale, indicating destructive potential beyond anything in Kitharan experience. The beings who built this technology fought a war against enemies that consumed entire civilizations, Sarah continued. They won that war by learning, by adapting, by never giving up, no matter how badly they were outnumbered. Those are human traits, War Commander. That's why they chose us as their inheritors. Threk looked around his ruined bridge, then at the tactical display showing his shattered fleet. The pride of Kitharan military might, reduced to burning wreckage in less than 2 hours. "What terms?" he asked quietly. "Full withdrawal from this system. Recognition of human sovereignty over hegemony worlds. Immediate cessation of all hostile actions against human colonies or vessels, and a formal apology to the families of every human you've killed." The War Commander's exoskeleton seemed to deflate. "And in return, you get to live. Your surviving crews get to go home to their families. And your people get to coexist peacefully with the new galactic power structure." Threk closed all 4 eyes. When he opened them again, something fundamental had changed in his expression. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the weary acceptance of a predator who had finally encountered something higher on the food chain. "I accept your terms." 3 hours later, the remnants of the Kitharan battle fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them news that would reshape the political landscape of the galaxy. The humans, once dismissed as a minor curiosity, had allies whose technology made every other spacefaring civilization obsolete. Commander Chen stood in the observation lounge of the rebuilt Times Endeavour *, watching the last Kitharan ship disappear into hyperspace. Dr. Harper joined her, carrying a tablet filled with updates from Earth. "Status report?" Sarah asked. "The data transmission reached Earth successfully. Every human colony now has access to basic hegemony technology. Ship construction has already begun in 12 systems. The Confederation Council estimates we'll have a fully operational fleet within 6 months." Sarah nodded slowly. "And the other powers? The Altarian Republic has requested formal diplomatic contact. The Centauri Trade Federation is offering exclusive economic partnerships. Even the Andromedans are talking about opening embassies. They want to be our friends now that we've proven we can fight. Harper smiled. That's how diplomacy has always worked, Sarah. Speak softly and carry a really big stick. We now have the biggest stick in known space. Through the observation port, they could see the Guardian station still rising from the planet's surface. Its construction facilities worked tirelessly, building ships and weapons and defensive systems that would ensure humanity's survival for millennia to come. But more than that, they had gained something even more valuable than technology. They had gained the respect of the galaxy. Dr. Harper, Sarah said thoughtfully, what do you think happens next? The scientist considered the question carefully. I think humanity grows up very quickly. We're not just explorers anymore, or researchers, or even a minor galactic power. We're the inheritors of the greatest civilization in galactic history. That comes with responsibilities. Sarah nodded. The hegemony fought the devourers to protect other species. Maybe that's our job now. Maybe that's why they chose us. Because we refuse to give up? Because we protect those who can't protect themselves. In the depths of space, automated monitoring stations that had been silent for 50,000 years continued to activate, responding to the awakening of their sister station. Ancient networks came online, and data flowed across the galaxy as the hegemony's legacy spread to its new inheritors. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same.